This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by Matchroom Boxing CEO Frank Smith here in Ipswich. I forgot who it was for a second there. Frank, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Great to be. It's my first time in Ipswich ever. Never.
Was you not a part of those meetings when they tried to bring a show here previously?
Oh, no, I don't get involved in the big meetings. Just do the small stuff in the background. No, but I've never come. It's my first. Eddie actually came down here, but first time in Ipswich, mate. It's raining. It's lovely.
It seems to be raining a lot in the UK, but Frank, first time in Ipswich, and you're hoping for somewhat of a revenge, if you will, over Queensberry Frank Warren. Obviously, we saw the tweet earlier this week, the Instagram post. You had a lovely cake delivered to the office. Did you enjoy that cake celebrating the anniversary of the 5 versus 5?
The saddest thing was I wasn't in the country, so I missed the cake. So out of all of the benefits I could have got, yes, we lost 10-0. It's been a year, and I missed the cake. Apparently, it was a good cake though. So fair play, because they could have sent a shit cake, but they sent a good cake. So fair play to them.
Did anything ever happen with that the side bet you had in terms of turning up at the Queensberry offices dressed as a maid?
No, my missus said my legs didn't look too good in the stockings, so I wasn't allowed. Otherwise, I would have been straight down there. Maybe we'll make another side bet today to add a bit of interest.
What, you double the quits or something?
Not in a maid's outfit. I'm not sure the maid's outfit hasn't survived, but we'll do a bet of some sort.
I'll leave you to work that one out then, Frank. Obviously, you're here to support Justice-Huni. Your man slips in on short notice against Fabio Wardley. Somebody else you know well previously promoted him. Stepping in at this stage, why do you feel like it was still the correct move for Justice? Why do you have so much confidence he can upset the odds here at Portman Road?
Look, I think this is the toughest fight of both guys' career and the highest level fight of both guys' career that they would have had. I think Justice-Huni is a tremendous fighter. We all know what Fabio Wardley's about. We all know what he's shown in his fights. Just look back as well to that Fraser Clark, the first time round as well. But I think Justice-Huni is going to be too good. I think he's had a lot of momentum. He's kept active in the last 16, 18 months. He's been busy. I think he would have learned a lot in that Kevin Lerena fight as well, just over a year ago now in Saudi. And I think this is perfect timing for him. Is it a risk? Jumping in at 5 weeks' notice, of course, or 4 weeks' notice, whatever the time frame is. But sometimes you've got to take those opportunities. And I think he can set himself up to be in a position amongst those big names in the heavyweight division if he can get the win on Saturday night, and we truly believe he can. Look, I've got a great relationship with Fabio Wardley, always have. Great guy, lovely person, but I think that Justice is going to be too good for him on Saturday.
People will obviously look at that Lerena fight for Justice, and he came through some very tough moments in that fight, and they might assume that if, say, Fabio was able to put Justice into similar tough moments, he would get the job done. What's the key for Justice, and how important is it that he avoids a firefight and he doesn't allow himself to get involved with Fabio?
I think it's the experience, though, of that fight as well against Kevin Lerena. I also think when you look back at the Kevin Lerena-Daniel Dubois fight and then see what Daniel Dubois has gone on to do, you can compare all of these heavyweights, but it's that individual moment you come through, that each fight. I think that Justice, like I say, that was the toughest fight of Justice's career to date, was the Kevin Lerena fight, right? But you need to go through those moments at some point, and they've all gone through them. So yes, I'm sure Fabio Wardley believes he can hurt Justice-Huni and put him in a position, but also I think Justice-Huni's got the ability to do that to Fabio, and I think Justice is a better fighter. But this is what it's all about: seeing the best fight the best, and making real fights happen. And you've got two young fighters coming together here, taking a chance. And fair play to both guys. Fair play to Fabio Wardley for accepting Justice-Huni, because a lot of people in the past wouldn't have done that. And the same for Justice-Huni taking it on short notice. So I'm excited. It's a great fight.
Another Matchroom versus Queensberry fight that's recently been announced is Garner versus Bellotti. Tyler Bevan also featuring on that undercard as well. Talking about that fight as well, Frank, how easy of a deal it was to get done and how exciting of a fight everybody's going to be in for when they step between the ropes.
100%. Look, Bellotti's one of those people that you look back over the years to see in the position he's in now, you wouldn't have said it. He had a great win last time out, and this was a fight that was very easy to get made. Both guys, as soon as the fight was offered, it was like, yeah, I'm up for it, I'm in. And that's what we want to see. We want to see real fights. And that's the joy as well of working together, is making proper fights. And we're going to continue to see that, especially with us both being on the DAZN platform. It makes things a lot easier. Taylor Bevan, as you say, he's obviously on the undercard. His first fight in his hometown, he'll sell 500 tickets. So it's good. It's good that we're all working together and making fights happen. And, it's long may it continue. We just made a fight as well with Bellotti. stepping in against Peter McGraw. Unfortunately, Shabazz Massoud injured, but that's another example of making good fights between us. So, yeah, everything's going in the right direction and it's positive.
We joked earlier about the anniversary of the 5 versus 5, but obviously there was a lot of talk a couple of months ago about potentially seeing some version of that later this summer around August time. Nothing seems to quite be materialising yet. What can you say in terms of the latest on trying to produce another card like that?
We're working through it now. Hopefully we'll get it up and running. You know, there's been a lot of back and forth on it. You'll definitely see a 5v5 again.
This year? Or?
Whether this year or early now, I think it was such a great format that worked so well that I think people really bought into it, and I think you'll definitely see it. And ultimately, we've got to get our revenge, haven't we? One way or the other.
One fight which was touted for that card was a potential Anthony Yarde and Callum Smith fight. Now, Callum Smith's also in talks with David Benavidez about a potential fight there. What's the latest with him with those talks?
I think the David Benavidez fight is the fight he wants, Callum Smith, but the Anthony Yarde fight's a great fight as well. You know, he's coming off the back of a great win against Joshua Riyadh. They're both great fights, but Benavidez, I think, should be the focus. You know, Benavidez obviously limited on options as well from his side as to who he can fight. So I think, you know, I'm hopeful that we'll see the Benavidez fight made.
How far along are you for all of those talks now, Frank? How much have they progressed since I last saw you at the Eubank Jr-Benn press conference?
We've had positive discussions. Eddie's obviously very close with Louis de Cubas, talking to him about the opportunity, whether it's in the UK, US. I think US more likely because of Benavidez, you know, power in the market there. But I think let's see. Hopefully we can make it happen and get things done.
So we've all seen those reports as well. Anthony Joshua potentially signing a deal with Riyadh season, a 2-fight deal, seen 3-fight deal mentioned. What can you tell me on that front, Frank?
No, it's just that obviously there were conversations when I think during the Canelo fight, which was start of May. He's coming off the back of his minor surgery he had. He'll be back in the gym training. And, you know, as soon as we get a timeline in place, we'll get a plan in place of what he's going to do next. You know, there's so many fights for Anthony Joshua. You know, Dubois and Usyk fight July 19th. AJ is still the biggest active name in the sport for any of these guys to fight. So let's see. Let's see. Whatever decision is made next, though, is the most important in his career. But nothing's set just yet.
I've seen the name Jerome Miller being floated about, and one which a few people online have suggested it's maybe not necessarily a front runner, but certainly starting to catch the eye of a few people trying to make a fight. Do you think that's one we could see in the near future, maybe at the back end of the year? Or?
I don't know. Do you know what fight I love if he comes through his warm-up, Deontay Wilder? You know, this sport is about narrative. You know, it's about narrative, it's about buying into fights that people have interest in. And that's a fight that everyone would still have interest in. Regardless of whether it didn't happen 5 years ago, people still want to see it now. So hopefully he can come through his fight. That's a great fight. Someone, I'm not sure if it was you or earlier mentioned Dillian Whyte fight as well. That's potentially a fight down the line. Like, there's so many options out there. It just also depends on what he wants to do. If he wants to go for the world title again, you know, what does he want to chase? Tyson Fury is a name that obviously we've spoken about a million times, but you know, it gets boring after a while saying the same thing. So let's get him back in the gym, get him fit, get him active, get him ready, and then we'll go from there.
With a potential Wilder fight, do you feel like he would need a bigger name to come back to on his resume than, with all due respect, who will be facing at the end of this month?
I don't think so. I think people look at the fight in front of them and people say Joshua Wilder's happening, everything of history's really forgotten. Am I sitting here saying it's going to be as big as it could have been? No. But it's still a massive fight. You know, when it comes to the public buying into something, that fight is huge still.
Frank is a man who's promoted and worked with Devin Haney, a man who also worked with Haney-Lopez when he fought George Kambosos Jr. What have you made of the fallout surrounding their fight?
Not surprised. Look, Teofimo's a madman. He's great. He is great. You know, when you see him at press conferences, the way he sells things, he's brilliant. But he's also mad. And look, it's two big characters and big characters involved in their fathers as well. It was never going to be easy, was it? So can I sit here and say I'm totally surprised? Not really. You know, and I know they would have been offered more than enough money to make the fight, but I don't know. I'm not involved, so I can't really speak too much. I can only speak on the characters involved, and so I can imagine it was a bit mental.
Just one final one to end on. Eubank Ben. Are talks underway at all for that rematch?
I mean, the fight is done. It's agreed. it's just a case now of the dates and the fixtures from the Premier League, which are out June 18th, and then we'll be able to go back to Tottenham and get the date set. You know, they're just waiting on their fixtures. But as His Excellency announced in the ring, the rematch wants it back at Tottenham, and you know everything else is in place. So yeah, but I haven't heard anything from the Eubank side. I'm not sure if they're saying anything different, but from our perspective, everything's good to go. We're just waiting on that date, so just under 2 weeks from now, we'll have that, and then can get it back up and running.
That's going to be my final question. To your knowledge, as far as you're aware, both men will be entertaining and entering a rematch come September time?
100% from my knowledge, but you know, again, I can't speak on their behalf, but from Conor Benn's perspective and our perspective, the fight was signed, sealed for the rematch, so yeah, should be no questions.
One final one on you, Frank. Sky and Boxer, do you know anything about whether the deal will be renewed or not? Nothing being mentioned more recently from either party.
I can only give you opinion. I don't know anything factually. I can imagine from Sky's perspective, they'll be sitting there. They're in a strong position. Sit there and say, "We'll take what we want to take," you know, because it hasn't been a success. You know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realise the last 4 years haven't been a success. And if you're Sky, you're sitting there going, "Do we want to extend this deal for another 3-4 years of pain and problems?" Probably not. It's just opinion. It's not factual, so you know I can't get in any trouble for saying what I'm saying. I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of extension on a non-exclusive basis based on fights that Sky want to take. You know, I can't imagine them going anywhere else because I can't imagine anyone else entertaining them, having seen what they've done in the last 4 years. Just my opinion. But let's see.
Side note, how important is it that Sky do stay involved in the sport?
Yeah, but I think times evolve. When you look at HBO and Showtime over the years, they were huge players in the sport of boxing. They've left. You know, times change. So yes, Sky are obviously a huge broadcaster. We work with them in other sports, of course, but I think sometimes the time comes and, you know, look, DAZN is the home of boxing, undoubtedly. That's why we made that move many years ago, because we believed in the direction that the platform would be going in. So anything's possible. Am I saying less people in the sport is good? No, not necessarily, but there's always new investment. So if there's new investment in the sport, sometimes other people look at it and go, "Do you know what? Not for us anymore." We're very happy where we are. DAZN, like I say, home of boxing, great time to be involved in the sport. So yeah, I mean, I don't spend too much time thinking about it because it's not my business.
Frank, pleasure as always. Enjoy the rest of this week. Good luck on Fight Night with Justice, and thanks for speaking to me on Boxing News.
Thanks, mate. Good to see you.